Is it better to write your first draft on paper or type it out? To be honest, I have absolutely no idea which one is better for myself, but by the end of this video, I hope to find out. And I say for myself because every writer is different, there's no one process that's going to work equally well for everyone. To find out which method works better for me, I'm going to do an experiment where I type out a story for an hour and then I write a story in a notebook for an hour and see which method works better. At the end of this experiment, I'm going to give my feedback on both methods, but I highly encourage you to try this out for yourself. As a writer, I think it's really easy to fall upon one writing process and just stick to it. However, I think it's really beneficial to try out different writing processes and techniques to see what actually works for you. For example, the only way I used to write was forcing myself to sit at my desk as long as I possibly could to churn out as many words as possible. I had always heard other writers swearing by 15 or 20-minute writing sprints, but I never gave it a shot. Until I finally did, and I realized I'm a way more efficient writer when I work for 15 or 20 minutes and then I give myself a break. On top of it helping me to be more productive, it's a way less torturous process. When I first tried a writing sprint for the first time, I did not think I was going to like it, and I was very happily surprised. With that being said, I'm going to try to go into this experiment with an open mind towards writing a story in a notebook. However, I will admit I pretty much exclusively write all my stories on my computer. We'll see if I'm proven wrong in this experiment, but I feel like I'm more efficient typing, and I feel like there's no real benefit to writing in a notebook. Sitting here before taking on this experiment, if anything, I feel like writing a story in a notebook is a waste of time because you have to then transfer it into your laptop. With my laptop, I also don't have to worry about losing my stories because they're all saved on the cloud. As for a notebook, I know from grade school that I can misplace one pretty easily. Now, I do think there are some benefits, especially when it comes to taking notes to writing in a notebook. I know in school, writing notes by hand helped me memorize stuff better. I just don't think those benefits are going to translate to creative writing. But that's just my hypothesis. I could be very wrong. That's why we do the experiment. For this experiment, I'm going to type out a story for 1 hour on my laptop. I will then take a 30-minute break to clear my head before writing a short story in my notebook. At the end of the experiment, I'll compare the amount of words I wrote typing compared to writing the story out, and then I'll also compare my experience writing by hand versus typing. I will also type out the story I've written by hand onto my laptop to see how much time I'm really losing by writing by hand. That's enough talk, let's get into this experiment. But before I do, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel, it really helps me out. Also, let me know in the comments before if you prefer to write by hand or type. I would love to know which method you feel is better. The only time I really write in a notebook is when I'm brainstorming ideas because it really helps me focus, and when I'm writing a YouTube script because it's more convenient. Although recently, to be perfectly honest, I have not been writing scripts for these videos. I've been kind of just babbling to the camera. Let's get ready. Yeah, I know, I typed like an idiot. Believe me, I'm working on it. Okay, so for the typing portion of this experiment, I wrote about 1,238 words of a story. There's not really much I can really reflect on typing out a story. It's the way I normally write stories, you know? 1,238 is pretty decent. I always aspire for that 2,000 words per hour pace, but 1,238, that's not bad. The story's coming out pretty decently so far. Now, I didn't finish it yet. That's perfectly fine. After I take my break, when I do the writing by hand portion of this experiment, I'm not going to write the same story. I'm going to write a different story because I feel like that would kind of ruin the experiment. If I was continuing off a story I wrote before, that would give me an advantage I didn't have because I was starting from scratch for the typing part. This is not perfect science, but I'm trying to limit the amount of variables here. I will admit, at a point, I did get a little distracted on my computer. I saw an email from a job that I applied to, and I checked it. Didn't get the job. Womp womp. And that's not me making excuses for if I write a little bit more on the notebook. No, that's totally part of this. It is easier to get distracted on the computer. That's one of the main reasons why when I brainstorm only with a notebook. Because if I'm on the computer, I'm going to end up looking stuff up, and then I get distracted. It's just a recipe for disaster. So I'm going to take a break for an hour or so, maybe make a couple writing memes, hang out with my dog, and then I'm going to see how writing by hand goes. I know this is not how you're supposed to hold a pencil. Believe me, I've been told many, many times. It really is no wonder why I have goblin handwriting. So I don't know what it was, but that written writing session felt longer than a typical writing session. I mean, it's not like it wasn't productive. I filled like 5 pages. It just felt really long. I did feel a bit more focused while I was writing in the sense where there were just less distractions. Maybe that's why this writing session felt so much longer. If I was on my computer, I might have taken a break or two, but this time I just wrote right through. And on one hand, it is a good thing that it forces me to keep on writing because I don't like to edit while I write. But sometimes when I'm writing a story, I do like to go back and add a little more context earlier in a paragraph. For example, if I realize I left out a detail in a scene, it's really convenient just to go back and quickly edit it. Back in the day when I really struggled with making progress in my writing because I'd rewrite the same scene over and over and over again because it was so easy to delete on my computer, I can see writing in a notebook being efficient. However, I feel like at this point I've become a lot more disciplined when it comes to writing on the computer to the point where that's not really useful for me anymore. I also feel like I nodded off once or twice while I was writing my notebook. That might be because this is the second hour-long writing session I've done today, but I normally do multiple hour-long writing sessions in a day, so could be a fluke, but I just thought I'd mention it. But before we make any final conclusions, let's tally up the words I wrote.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
This is going to take forever. After trying to count these words 4 times and losing track around 200 every single time, I've remembered that a part of this experiment was supposed to be typing the words out after, to see how much time I'd be wasting doing that if I were to write in a notebook. And now I feel kind of dumb for trying to count them here when I can just count them on the computer. That would make a lot more sense. The way I'm looking back and forth makes it look like I'm playing Five Nights at Freddy's or something. I freaking hate that game. Oh, it took forever. So I typed up the story that I wrote by hand, and it ended up being 1,130 words. So I was more efficient typing out the story, and that doesn't even consider the fact that I had to spend like 30 or so minutes typing it out onto the computer, which, to be honest, was kind of like pulling teeth. My final thoughts after doing this experiment are I don't think there are many benefits to writing out your story by hand as opposed to typing them out. If I'm being perfectly honest, I'm glad I tried this out, but I don't think I'm going to be trying it again. After trying both these methods, it seemed like writing on paper just took more time. Also, I will note that my handwriting is pretty awful. So it definitely did not help the notebook's case that I could barely read my handwriting. For those of you who write by hand more frequently, that might not be the case. I know there are a ton of authors out there that love the aesthetic of writing in a beautiful notebook with a fountain pen. That's just not me. I don't need to set the mood with candles or find the perfect place to write to get work done. For me, typing out my draft is definitely the way to go. Maybe writing by hand works better for you, so I urge you to try this out. At the very least, you'll get a different writing experience. Anyway, that was my conclusion. Thanks for watching this video. Good luck on your writing journey.